Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 4 of Hardcore Minecraft. In this episode there will be some decorating, a little bit of building and a lot of chaos with villagers. So if you enjoy this video please consider subscribing and leaving a like, and if you haven't seen them already check out the previous episodes of this series, but without further ado let's get started. So I began by trying to trap the villagers that I got in the boats last episode in these little kiosk market stalls near my house. It took me so long to get them up the hill from the boats that I'd left them in last episode, and I spent a long time walling them in to try and stop them escaping. This librarian villager in particular really did not want to go in and took an obscenely long time to get in the kiosk. But eventually I managed to get them into their little kiosks, and I think it would be quite useful to have villagers right outside my house for when I need to trade. I then started collecting cherry trees, which I had planted around my stables in the previous episode. I wanted to build using the cherry logs and decorate using the leaves, which interior decor was the main aim of this episode, and I thought they would be a really cute addition to the base. When I started decor, I began with these slabs, which I used as a sort of kitchen counter or shelf, and then I always tend to use barrels as kitchen cabinets with fence posts above them to make them look really cute and like they're hanging from the ceiling. I then went down into my chest area to get some things to decorate with. I thought the paintings would be an obvious choice and I made quite a few of them using the wool that I'd collected in the previous episode. I then went to go and get some clay because whenever I think about interiors in Minecraft I always think of pots, and I really like putting cherry saplings in them because I think they look like little bonsai trees. And I knew at some point that the exceedingly long amount of time I spent collecting the 11 different dyes for my rainbow sheep would come in useful, as I decided I wanted to create a rainbow carpet in my base. So I started collecting all of the wool from the sheep that I would need and lining it all neatly up in my inventory to make sure I didn't miss any of the colours that I needed. My intention was always to keep the interior fairly simple, with traditional staples like pots and armour stands, including rainbow carpets, so that's why I went with doing this for my base, and I think it looks really cool because it stretches across the relatively big space that I have. When it came to my enchanting setup, I wanted to use the cherry blossom leaves that I'd collected. I usually make an enchanting setup really spooky with cobwebs and things like that, so I wanted to make this one brighter and more whimsical with lots of flowers and pink details. I went back into my chest room to look at the plants that I thought could match the ideas that I had, and that included putting another pot out, but this time with a pink tulip. I added one of my favourite paintings, some more shelves and some carpet, and then went to go grab a chest which I put in the corner here and filled up with lapis so that I would never have to keep going down to my chest room every time I wanted to enchant something. I completely spread it out and that completes the enchanting setup. I keep hoping that some cats are going to spawn in the nearby village, so I went to collect some salmon so that I would have it on hand in case I could ever actually get a cat to tame. I'm not entirely sure if I'll ever get one, but I can just use this as food if I need to. Back into the house again to do some more decor. I really like the idea of having a map on the wall so that I could see the area expand. I think this looks really cool and it still has most of my farm in it, as you can see. However, I didn't really like where I ended up putting it, so I moved it over to the corner and made it sure it was the right orientation. I thought this area was really starting to take shape. You can see that I added the pot in the corner and I also added other things like the armor stand and the shelf by the other window. I then decided that I needed to add another painting near this crafting area, and I really thought it was starting to look quite complete. I especially love the falling cherry leaves. As I seem to do every episode, I decided to massively expand my farm. I do this for a reason though. I think that having a really massive field of wheat really adds some aesthetic to the area without actually having to put in all that much effort. And then that night I decided to watch the sun go down over my sheep and cow pens, which seemed like a really nice idea at the time, but definitely spelled disaster for the following morning, so was probably not the best idea. I got up the next day to find that my villagers had been killed in the night. I was definitely distraught about this, but it was 100% my own fault. I then had to embark on part 2 of trying to get villagers into the little kiosks. I really didn't want to build a new villager trading centre, so I went with this again, and they would not come up the hill, and it took me so long to try and trap them back in. It was genuinely infuriating. This villager in particular really made me feel like I was going insane. He kept escaping from the little confines I was building to try and get him back in, and you can see here when I broke the block, I didn't place it back down in time, and he ended up managing to escape again, despite me trying to punch him back in, which obviously wasn't going to work. But I was infuriated enough that, despite not being the best solution, I just ended up killing him. With the second villager, I was determined to be a bit more patient, even trying to let him walk up himself, but that didn't work. I ended up having to go and catch him again in the boat when he escaped, and then decided that I had to build him a little path to get him back to where we started. Then I went with the method of boxing him in with mud, and then trying to push him into where I wanted him to go. And eventually this worked, and I managed to get him back into the little kiosk and block it off. Then I decorated it a bit more and was quite happy that I managed to get one. But I had to go back to the village, at which point I found that I hadn't got any more villagers other than these two nitwits. So I decided to try and breed them. I blocked it off so that they could definitely not get attacked and killed by mobs, as I wasn't going to make that mistake twice in one episode. I don't have that much experience with breeding villagers, and for some reason decided that I wanted to be able to see in, so added these fence posts instead before completely covering the rest up with blocks. But I really hope that this would work, as I literally only had one villager at the time, and I was currently covering his face up with a block to try and stop him from getting killed during the night. I really didn't want to make that mistake again. The next thing I did was start on a path over to the little villager area. I used some coarse dirt along with just some general Minecraft paths, and I thought it looked pretty good. Then I spotted a skeleton out of my window and decided that I wanted to go and kill it, as I'd seen some wolves in the previous episode and was determined to go and get one as a pet. I killed a creeper, but then couldn't find the skeleton anywhere. It was really confusing. I don't know where it went. Then I went back to visit my villager, which at this point had turned into a librarian with some pretty good trades. I then decided a new way of keeping them safe was to use this trap door. I hope it works. Then, to cheer myself up, I decided to build something with cherry wood, and I started on a little circular house. I went to go and collect some more so that I could add to this little wall that I was going to build. I stripped all of the logs to get the pretty pink colour, and it ended up looking like this. I used some planks as well and some diorite roof. I've got no idea what I'm going to use it for, but then I came across a wandering trader which came into my area. It's the first one I've seen in the series, and I thought that was kind of cool. It made me feel a bit better after the villagers. To round off the area a bit more, I added more to my field of wheat, coming around the side of my house this time, up the river, and I think this will make it look really cool once it's all grown in. This took me a while and a couple different hoes, so much so that the sun started to go down, but look, I think this is going to look really cool when it's all done. Then I wanted to start on the interior decor of the upstairs, so I collected some spruce leaves along with some magenta wool. I then needed some pink dye to turn my white wool pink to make pink carpet, which I was going to use around the spiral staircase on the first floor. I ended up running out of my pink carpet and had to go get some more, but I think the end result looks pretty good, and I definitely like being able to have something around the spiral staircase. I added a bit more light before starting with the leaves. I wanted to do something similar to what I'd done with the cherry leaves, except I wanted something green, and I liked the dark green of the spruce with the pink interiors as well. It's kind of like adding ivy around the corners of the room. But then I went to go and make some more pots because I can't not have flowers up here. I added this little bench as well as some pink ones next to my bed, which I'm not too sure about because the pink doesn't exactly match with the bed. But then I added more lily of the valleys and alliums around the room. This is such a simple way to add a bit more. I then went around with paintings, which were also quite an easy way to fill up more space. I went with the one of the giant skull, which definitely isn't in keeping with all the pink, but I like the blue with the pink, and this is how the room turned out. I definitely didn't do as much up here, and it's quite simple, but I like how it turned out. I then went to go and check on my villagers, and after giving them some bread, they created a third villager, which is great because I will finally be able to complete the 2 kiosks the way they were before the first set of villagers died. So that's really good, and that's something I can do in the next episode. Then the sun started to go down, so I had to race back to my house. I was a little bit worried, however, I managed to get back without being attacked at all, and I was able to go to sleep safely. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please let me know what you think I should be doing next. For example, I would usually go to the Nether at this stage, however, I always die, so let me know if this is something you think I should try, or whether I should do a bit more in this series before attempting it. In between these episodes, you can check out my shorts. However, that's it for today, and I will see you next time.